"Do you want to be my son?" said the sterile millionaire to the poor farmer's son. Richard Johnson had been watching the boy from a distance for 2 weeks. Every morning, as he drove down the dirt road, cutting through the crops on his way to his ranch, he saw that child working with a dedication that impressed him. Today, he had finally stopped the car and stepped out to talk. It was when he approached the boy working alone in the cornfield that he asked the question that would change everything. "Do you want to be my son?" Richard said, extending his hand. To the 9-year-old boy who eyed him with suspicion, Michael stopped weeding and stared at the man in the grey suit bending toward him. He had never seen anyone so well dressed in these parts. The man had salt and pepper hair combed back and a golden watch that glinted in the morning sun. "Are you serious, mister?" Michael asked, wiping his dirt-covered hands on his faded denim overalls. "Very serious," Richard replied, keeping his hand outstretched. "I'm Richard Johnson, owner of the agribusiness company in Denver. I've been watching you work here every day." The boy didn't accept the handshake and took a step back. "My dad always said not to talk to strangers," Michael muttered. Richard smiled and lowered his hand. "Your father is a wise man. Where is he now?" "He's in town trying to sell what's left of the harvest." Michael looked at the ground. "Said, if he can't, we'll have to leave." Those words hit Richard like a punch to the gut. For 15 years, ever since he found out he was sterile, he had dreamed of having a son. His wife, Catherine, had grown distant and cold after the diagnosis. They had tried adoption for years, but the process always got tangled in endless red tape. "What's your name?" Richard asked. "Michael Smith Williams." "Michael, how old are you?" "9. The boy hesitated. "Why do you want to know?" Richard looked around. The small wooden house at the end of the property had a leaky roof and peeling walls. The clothes hanging on the line were patched and faded, yet everything was tidy and clean. "Because I've never seen a child work with so much responsibility," Richard said. "Do you live just with your parents?" Michael nodded. "And 2 little sisters. Emma's 5 and Olivia's 2. Richard's heart clenched even tighter. An entire family depending on this boy. "Michael, how would you like to come live with me in Denver? You'd have your own study room, new clothes, food always on the table." "And leave my family?" Michael's eyes widened. "Never. It wouldn't be forever," Richard tried to explain. "It'd be like you were my son too. You could visit your parents whenever you wanted." The boy crossed his arms. "You're crazy? I'm not leaving my dad and mom. They need me." Richard realized he had been too direct. This child had an impressive loyalty to his family. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you," Richard said. "What if I talk to your parents first?" "Why?" "To get to know them better. To see if I can help in some way." Michael studied the man's face for a few seconds. "You're not gonna try to take our land, are you? Because that Victor guy already tried a bunch of times." "Who's Victor?" "A big rancher who wants to buy our land for cheap." Michael spat on the ground. "My dad says he's dishonest." Richard knew Victor Reynolds. He was a local rancher known for shady practices when buying small plots. "I have nothing to do with Victor," Richard assured him. "In fact, I don't like him much either." That seemed to ease Michael a little. "When do your parents get back from town?" "My dad should be back this afternoon. My mom's home taking care of the girls." "Can I meet your mom now?" Michael thought for a moment. "I guess so. But she's also wary of strangers." The two walked toward the house. Richard noticed Michael limping slightly on his left leg. "Did you hurt yourself?" "It's nothing." Michael tried to brush it off. "I was born with it. The doctor said surgery could help, but it's too expensive," Richard finished. Michael just nodded. As they neared the house, a young woman appeared at the door. Jennifer Williams was only 32 but looked older from life's hardships. Her brown hair was tied in a simple bun, and she wore a worn but clean dress. "Michael, who is this man?" Jennifer asked, drying her hands on a cloth. "He said he wants to talk to you, Mum." Jennifer stepped down the 3 wooden porch steps and stopped a few feet from Richard. "I'm Richard Johnson," he introduced himself. "I own a business in Denver and would like to talk to you about your son." "Talk about what?" Jennifer immediately grew alert. "Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. Mrs. Williams, may I be frank with you? Go ahead. I've been watching Michael work here for a few weeks. I've never seen a child so dedicated and responsible. Jennifer looked at her son with pride. Michael's always been like that since he was little. When his father goes to work, he takes care of everything here. That's exactly what impresses me, Richard said. Do you know, I've never been able to have children. Jennifer didn't answer, just kept listening. My wife and I tried to adopt for years, but it never worked out. When I saw Michael, I thought maybe... You want to take my son? Jennifer interrupted firmly. Not take. I want to offer him opportunities, education, medical treatment for his leg, a better future. And in return? Richard hesitated. In return, he'd be like a son to me. Jennifer crossed her arms. Mr. Johnson, Michael is my son. He came from my womb, grew up in my arms. No matter how much money you have, he's not for sale. I'm not trying to buy him, Richard hurried to explain. I'm offering a partnership. Michael would still be your son, but he'd also be mine. He'd have access to things you can't provide right now. Like what? Private school, English lessons, a computer, books, proper medical care. Jennifer looked at Michael, who stayed silent. What do you think about this, son? I don't want to leave you, Mom. No one's talking about you leaving, Richard said. I'm talking about expanding your family. Just then, two little girls appeared behind Jennifer. Emma, 5 years, old, had curly hair and curious eyes. Olivia, too, hid behind her mother's skirt. Who's he, Mommy? Emma asked. A man who came to talk about Michael, Jennifer said, picking Olivia up. Richard looked at the three children and felt his heart tighten even more. The whole family lived in such difficult conditions, yet there was so much love between them. Mrs. Williams, may I ask a personal question? Go ahead. How are you doing financially? Jennifer sighed heavily. You want the truth. We owe money at the market, the pharmacy, the gas station. This year's harvest was bad because of the drought. David left early today to try selling what's left, but I don't know if it'll even cover half of what we owe. And if you can't pay, we'll have to sell the land to Victor for whatever price he offers. Jennifer lowered her voice. It's our only option. Richard saw an opportunity. What if I paid off all your debts? Jennifer eyed him suspiciously. In exchange for what? In exchange for letting Michael spend a few hours a day at my house. He'd still live here but would have private lessons with me. He would learn about business, computers, English. Why would you do that? Richard was honest. Because I've always wanted a son, and Michael reminds me of the boy I used to be. Hardworking, smart, determined. Jennifer grew thoughtful. The offer was tempting, but something didn't feel right. I'll wait for David to get home so we can talk it over. Of course, Richard said. What time does he usually arrive? Around 5 in the afternoon. Richard checked his watch. It was 2 in the afternoon. Can I come back at 5:30? You may. Richard said goodbye and returned to his car. As he drove back to Denver, his mind buzzed with plans. He had finally found the son he'd always wanted. Now he just had to convince the parents. When he got home, a 3-story mansion in Cherry Creek, he found his wife Catherine reading a magazine in the living room. How was your visit to the ranch? She asked without looking up. I met an interesting family, Richard said, taking off his jacket. Interesting how? They have a son, a 9-year-old boy who might be the answer to our problems. Catherine finally looked at her husband. What kind of answer? The son we've always wanted. Catherine shut the magazine sharply. Richard, let's not start this adoption talk again. We've been through this too many times. This time is different. Richard sat beside her. The boy needs us as much as we need him. What do you mean? Richard told her about Michael and his family. He spoke of the boy's dedication, his parents' financial struggles, the unique opportunity they had. So you basically want to buy a child, Catherine said disdainfully. It's not buying, it's helping. It's creating a situation where everyone wins. And you think I'd agree to raise some poor farm boy? Richard felt anger rising. Catherine, you spend all day complaining we don't have children. Now that an opportunity comes, you reject it out of prejudice. It's not prejudice, it's realism. That child doesn't have our education, our culture, our social standing. How do you expect him to adapt to our world? The same way any child adapts, with love, patience, and dedication. Catherine stood up. Richard, if you bring that boy into this house, I'm leaving. Maybe that's for the best, Richard shot back. At least then I could have a happy home. Catherine turned pale and stormed out of the room. Richard was left, alone, more determined than ever. If his wife couldn't understand his feelings, he'd act alone. At exactly 5:30, Richard was back at the small rural property. David Williams had just returned from town and was talking with Jennifer on the porch. David was a lean 35-year-old man with calloused hands and a sunburned face. He wore simple clothes and spoke in a calm manner. "So you're the Richard who wants to take our son," David said bluntly. "I want to offer him opportunities," Richard corrected. "What kind of opportunities?" Richard repeated his proposal. He spoke about education, medical care, a promising future. "And in return, Michael would be your son too?" David asked. "That's right." David glanced at Jennifer, then at Michael playing with his sisters in the yard. "Mr. Richard, can I be honest? Of course, and I only sold half the harvest today. Prices are too low. With what I made, I can't even pay a third of our debts." Richard stayed silent. "Jennifer told me your offer to pay our debts. That would solve our immediate money troubles." "And would you accept?" David sighed. "I have to think about my whole family's well-being. If Michael stays here with me, we might have to sell the land and move to town to find work. There, he'd have even fewer opportunities." "So, do you accept my proposal?" "I don't know yet," David was honest. "Hers, I need to talk more with Michael. If he doesn't want to, I won't force him." Richard nodded. "And if he accepts, then we'll discuss the details." David called Michael. "Son, come here." Michael approached, still wary of Richard. "Michael, Mr." Richard explained his proposal. "What do you think?" The boy looked at his parents, then at Richard. "I don't know, Dad. I'm scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared you won't love me anymore if I become rich." Jennifer knelt and hugged her son. "Michael, that will never happen. You're our son and always will be, no matter where you live or how much money you have. But what if I change? What if I get all spoiled and don't want to play with you anymore?" Richard was moved by the purity of those concerns. "Michael, can I promise you something? If you change in a way you don't like, you can come home anytime." "Really? Really?" Michael thought for a few minutes. "Can I try it for a week?" Richard smiled. "You can try it for as long as you want." "Okay then," Michael extended his small hand. "But only if my dad and Mom agree." David and Jennifer exchanged glances. "We need a night to think," said Jennifer. "Of course," Richard shook Michael's hand. "I'll come back tomorrow for your answer." That night, the Williams family talked late into the night. They weighed pros and cons, fears and hopes. "What do you think, Jennifer?" asked David. "I think it's an opportunity that might never come again," Jennifer sighed. "But I'm afraid of losing my son, and I'm afraid I can't give him what he deserves." David looked out the window. "Sometimes I think I'm an inadequate father." "David, don't say that. You're a wonderful father." "I'm a poor father, Jennifer, and poverty limits so much of what I can give our children. But we give love. Love doesn't pay for school doctors or food on the table." Jennifer began to cry. "So you want to give away our son?" "I don't want to give him away. I want to give him a chance at a better life." In the children's room, Michael listened to everything and cried silently too. He didn't want to leave his family, but he also understood their struggles. The next morning, Richard arrived early. The family was gathered on the porch. "We've made a decision," said David. Richard held his breath. "We accept your proposal, but with some conditions." "What conditions?" "First, Michael sleeps here at home every night." "Agreed." "Second, he spends entire weekends with us." "Agreed." "Third, if at any point he wants to stop, it stops immediately." "Agreed." "Fourth, we want to see your home and meet your wife first." Richard hesitated. "My wife is reluctant about the idea." Then maybe we should reconsider, said Jennifer. No, Richard hurried. She just needs time. I'm sure she'll love Michael once she meets him. We want to be sure he'll be treated well, David insisted. He'll be treated like a prince, I promise. Richard was willing to accept any condition. He'd finally have the son he'd always dreamed of. So when do we start? Asked Michael. How about today? Richard suggested. Today? Jennifer grew anxious. Just to see my house. Michael will have lunch with me, see the place, and I'll bring him back in the afternoon. The family reluctantly agreed. Richard left with Michael in the passenger seat of his imported car. The boy was impressed by the vehicle's luxury. This car must cost more than our whole house, Michael remarked. Probably, Richard laughed. But you'll learn money isn't the most important thing in life. That's what my dad always says. On the drive to Denver, Richard asked many questions about Michael's likes and interests. He discovered the boy loved math, liked animals, and dreamed of seeing the ocean. When they arrived at the mansion, Michael's jaw dropped. Wow, is this where you live? This is where we are going to live, Richard corrected. The house had well-kept gardens, a large swimming pool, and a breathtaking view of Denver. Michael had never seen so much luxury in one place. How many people live here? Just me and my wife, and now you. Only 3 people in this huge house. Richard realized how excessive that must seem to a child who shared a tiny room with 2 sisters. The house is too big, Richard admitted. That's why it'll be livelier with you here. They stepped inside. Michael was amazed by the elegant furniture, the paintings on the walls, the soft rugs. You can walk freely, Richard said, noticing Michael's cautious steps. I won't get anything dirty. If you do, we'll clean it. Just then, Catherine came down the stairs. She was impeccably dressed and made up, but her expression was cold. So this is the boy, she said, looking Michael up and down. Michael, this is my wife, Catherine. Michael politely extended his hand. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Catherine. Catherine glanced at the boy's dirt-stained hand and didn't return the gesture. Richard, I need to speak with you, she said sharply. Not now, Catherine. Yes, now. Richard was embarrassed. Michael, why don't you go check out the backyard? There's a vegetable garden out back you might like. The boy left, relieved to escape the tension. Catherine, what was that? Richard whispered. That was me making it clear I don't agree. With this madness. The boy is polite, intelligent. The boy is dirty and poorly dressed. How do you expect me to introduce him to our friends? With new clothes and a bath, he'll be presentable. Richard, you don't understand. It's not just appearance. It's upbringing, it's breeding, it's social class. You can't turn a farm boy into high society overnight. Yes, I can, and I will. Catherine laughed sarcastically. Good luck, but don't count on me for this charade. Furious, Richard stormed out and went to find Michael in the yard. The boy was admiring the vegetable garden. Such beautiful greens, Michael said. Who takes care of them? A gardener who comes 3 times a week. At home, my dad and I take care of our garden, and you do an excellent job. Michael noticed the tension on Richard's face. Mrs. Catherine didn't like me, did she? Richard sighed. There was no point lying to such a perceptive child. She just needs time to adjust. You have to understand, this is new for her too. If she doesn't want me here, I can go back home. No, Michael, this is your home now too. Catherine will get used to it. But Richard wasn't as sure as he sounded. They had lunch together at the large dining table. Michael ate quietly, amazed by the amount and variety of food. All this food is just for the 2 of you? Now it's for the 3 of us. And if there's leftovers? The maid takes them home or we put them in the fridge. Michael grew thoughtful. At home, we never have leftovers. Here, we won't either anymore, Richard promised. After lunch, Richard showed Michael his new room. It was bigger than the entire Williams family home. It had a large bed, a spacious closet, a desk, a bookshelf full of books, and even a TV. All this is for me. All yours. Michael sat on the bed and bounced a little. It's so soft. Do you like it? I do, but I miss the noise of my sisters. Richard smiled. You can visit them every day. Really? Really? By late afternoon, Richard took Michael back home. The whole family was eager to hear about his first day. "So, son, how was it?" Jennifer asked. "The house is really nice, Mom. It has a pool, a garden, a room just for me." "And how is Mrs. Catherine?" David asked. Michael glanced at Richard before answering. "She's different." Richard intervened. "Catherine just needs time to adjust. Soon you'll be good friends." Jennifer noticed the hesitation in Richard's voice but said nothing. "Tomorrow morning, I'll pick up Michael so we can start his lessons," said Richard. "What kind of lessons?" asked David. "Advanced math, Portuguese, English, computer skills, financial literacy." "Financial literacy for a 9-year-old?" Jennifer was surprised. "It's never too early to learn about money and business," David agreed. "That's true. I'd like to understand more about those things myself." "Maybe you could join some of the lessons too," Richard suggested. David's eyes lit up. "Really?" "Of course. It would be good for Michael to have his father involved in his learning." That suggestion made the whole family more excited about the arrangement. The next morning, Richard arrived right at 8. Michael was ready, wearing clean clothes with his hair neatly combed. "Good morning, son," Richard said, the words coming naturally. "Good morning," Michael hesitated. "What should I call you?" "You can call me Uncle Richard, or, if you prefer, Daddy Richard. I think I'll go with Uncle Richard for now." "Perfect." On the way to Denver, Richard explained the routine. "In the morning, we'll study. In the afternoon, you can play, watch TV, or use the computer. At the end of the day, I'll bring you back home. What about Mrs. Catherine? What about her? Will she be joining the lessons too?" Richard hesitated. "Catherine has her own activities." When they arrived at the mansion, Catherine had already left. Richard was relieved. They settled in the library for the first lesson. Richard had prepared age-appropriate teaching materials, but soon realized Michael was smarter than he'd expected. "You already read well," Richard observed. "My mum taught me. She studied up to 8th grade. What about math?" "I know a little. My dad teaches me how to count money from selling produce from our garden." Richard was impressed. In just 2 hours, Michael grasped concepts that usually took a week to teach. During the break, they went to the backyard. Michael played in the pool for the first time in his life. "The water's warm," he said, delighted. "It's heated. You can use it whenever you want." Even in winter, Michael dove in and swam awkwardly but with pure joy. "My dad always said he'd take me to see the ocean," Michael said, floating on his back. "We'll go to the beach soon." "Really?" "Really." After the swim, Richard gave Michael new clothes, brand-name jeans, an Egyptian cotton t-shirt, imported sneakers. "These clothes cost more than my family makes in a month," Michael said, looking at himself in the mirror. "Now you're part of my family too. These things are normal for us." "But I don't feel normal. I feel like make-believe," Richard laughed. "You'll get used to it." At lunch, Catherine appeared. She looked Michael up and down and made a sharp comment. "At least now he's presentable." Michael lowered his eyes, embarrassed. "Catherine," Richard scolded. "What? It was a compliment." "Didn't sound like one." The rest of lunch passed in tense silence. Michael barely touched his food. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers. Now, continuing. In the afternoon, Richard taught Michael how to use the computer. The boy was fascinated by the technology. "Can I send a message to my parents? Do they have email?" "I don't know what that is." Richard explained emails and social media. He promised to teach Michael's family how to use these tools. That way, you can stay in touch even when you're here. That's so cool. At the end of the day, Richard took Michael home as promised. His family was eager to hear about his second day. "I learned how to use a computer," Michael said excitedly, "and I swam in a heated pool. The sisters were impressed." "Did you get rich, Michael?" asked Emma. "I didn't get rich. I'm just learning new things." "And Mrs. Catherine?" asked Jennifer. Michael made a face. "She doesn't like me very much." Richard felt embarrassed. "She's just getting used to it." "Uncle Richard," said Michael, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why didn't Mrs. Catherine want to have kids?" Richard was speechless. How could he explain to a child that his wife considered him inadequate? She does want kids, it's complicated. David noticed Richard's discomfort. Michael, sometimes adults have problems kids don't need to. Understand? Okay, Dad. That night, Richard went home determined to have a serious talk with Catherine. Catherine, we need to talk. About what? About your attitude toward Michael. My attitude is normal. Normal? You treat him like he's an intruder, because that's what he is, an intruder in our life. Richard was furious. Catherine, either you change your attitude or our next conversation will be about divorce. You're threatening me over some random kid. He's not just some random kid. He's the boy I chose to be my son. Then choose him or me. I won't choose because I shouldn't have to. A wife should support her husband, not sabotage his dreams. Catherine was silent for a few seconds. Richard, you don't understand. I'm scared. Scared of what? Scared you'll love him more than me. Richard was surprised by the confession. Catherine, it's not a competition. I can love you both in different ways. But you've never looked at me the way you look at him, because he represents something you never wanted to give me, the chance to be a father. Catherine started crying. I wanted to give you children, Richard, but you're sterile. It wasn't my choice. And it wasn't mine either. Richard shot back. But now we have a chance to be a family. Why can't you accept that? Because I'm scared I won't know how to be a mother. It was the first time Catherine admitted her fears. Richard stepped closer and hugged her. No one is born knowing how to be a parent. We learn day by day. What if I can't love him like a son? Then at least treat him with respect for me. Catherine promised to try, but Richard knew it would be a long battle. In the following weeks, a routine settled in. Michael spent mornings studying with Richard and afternoons exploring his new reality. He visited restaurants, shopping malls, and the movies. He tried foods he'd never tasted before. But with each new experience, he felt further from his old life. Uncle Richard, Michael said one afternoon, can I confess something? Of course. Sometimes I feel guilty. Guilty about what? About living in luxury while my family is still struggling. Richard thought for a moment. Would you like your family to have more comfort too? Of course. Then I have a proposal. How about we renovate your family's house? Michael's eyes lit up. Really? Really? We can build new rooms, fix the roof, upgrade the electricity. Will my parents agree? Let's ask them. When Richard made the offer to David and Jennifer, they hesitated. Isn't this too much? Asked Jennifer. You're my family now too, said Richard. It's only natural I'd want you to be comfortable. But we don't want to become dependent on you, said David. You won't be dependent. You'll keep working, farming, living your lives, just with more comfort. After much discussion, the family agreed. Richard hired a construction company, and within 2 months the small house was completely renovated. New bedrooms, a bathroom with hot water, a modern kitchen, a spacious living room, everything done tastefully, without excess. Our house turned into a palace, Emma exclaimed when the construction was finished, but not everything was rosy. Victor Reynolds, the rancher who wanted to buy the Williams family's land, was furious when he heard about the improvements. Who did these renovations? And he asked David. A friend of ours. What friend? Richard Johnson. Victor turned pale. He knew Richard and was aware he had far greater financial resources. David, you don't know who you're dealing with. What do you mean? Richard Johnson is an unscrupulous businessman. He must be using you for something. You're mistaken. Richard is a good person. We'll see, Victor said in a threatening tone. That night, Victor called some contacts and began spreading rumors about Richard in Denver. Richard Johnson is trying to buy the Williams property illegally. Richard is exploiting a poor family. Richard has ulterior motives with that family. The rumors reached Richard's ears a week later through a client. Richard, I heard some rumors about you and a family of farmers. Is it true? What kind of rumors? That you're trying to buy their land illegally. Richard was furious. He knew it could only be Victor's doing. That afternoon, instead of taking Michael straight home, he went to talk to David first. David, I need to warn you about something. What is it? Victor is spreading lies about me in Denver. What kind of lies? Richard told him about the rumors. That's ridiculous, David said. Everyone here knows what kind of person Victor is. But the people in Denver don't, and this could hurt my business. What can we do? For now, nothing, but I want you to be prepared in case things get complicated. Do you feel harmed for helping us? No, never. I just want you to be ready if things get tough. David grew worried. He didn't want Richard to suffer because of them. The following week, the rumors intensified. Some clients cancelled contracts with Richard's company. Others questioned his integrity. Richard, his accountant, said, "You need to do something about these rumors. They're seriously affecting the business. What do you suggest?" "Maybe it's best to distance yourself from that family for a while." "No way. Then at least make it official. Legally adopt the boy." Richard became thoughtful. Legal adoption would solve many issues, but also create other complications. That night, he talked to Michael about the possibility. "Michael, how would you feel if I officially adopted you?" "What does that mean?" "It means you'd be my son on paper too. And my parents, would they stop being my parents?" "No. You'd have 2 fathers and 2 mothers." Michael was confused. "Is that possible?" "With your parents' consent, yes. And if they don't agree, then we stay as we are." Michael thought for a few minutes. "Can I talk to them first?" "Of course." When Richard presented the idea to David and Jennifer, they were shocked. "Adoption," Jennifer repeated. "It would just be paperwork," Richard explained. "Nothing would change in practice." "But Michael would officially be your son," David said. "And he'd still be your son too." Jennifer began to cry. "I don't know if I can sign a paper giving away my child." "It wouldn't be giving away. It would be sharing." "To me, it's the same thing," David pondered. "Richard, why is this important to you?" Richard was honest. "Because they're spreading rumors about our arrangement. With legal adoption, no one could question my relationship with Michael. And without it, I could have problems with my business." David felt guilty. "I don't want to harm you." "You're not harming me. But adoption would solve many problems." The family asked for time to think. For a week, David and Jennifer argued intensely about the proposal. "What do you think, Jennifer?" "I think we're losing our son. Little by little." "What do you mean?" "Look how much he's changed. The clothes, the way he talks, his tastes. He's becoming a different person. But he still sleeps here every night, spends weekends with us." "For now." "What if Richard decides he wants him full-time?" "Richard wouldn't do that." "Are you sure?" David wasn't. In fact, he had also noticed changes in Michael's behavior. The boy had grown accustomed to luxury and sometimes showed impatience with the limitations of ranch life. "Why don't we have air conditioning?" Michael had complained the week before. "Because we don't need it," David replied. "But it would be more comfortable." "Michael, too much comfort makes people weak." "What do you mean? When everything comes easy, you don't learn to appreciate what you have." Michael grew thoughtful, but David could tell he hadn't fully understood. Meanwhile, Richard's problems at work were escalating. Victor had convinced several people that Richard was involved in something illegal. "Richard," said an important supplier, "I can't do business with you until this situation is cleared up." "What situation?" "There is no situation. The rumors are too strong. I can't risk my reputation." Richard realized he needed to act fast. He sought out an attorney. "Attorney James, I need to sue Victor Reynolds for defamation." "Do you have proof he spread the rumors?" "I'm certain, but proof, that would be hard to get." "Then, it'll be tricky, but I can send him a cease and desist letter to stop the comments." "Do it." When Victor received the letter, he grew even angrier. He decided to turn up the pressure. He started spreading even worse rumors. "Richard Johnson is abusing the child. The Williams family is being blackmailed. Richard has psychological issues." The new rumors were more serious and spread quickly through the small town. Within days, Richard began getting strange looks on the street. Some clients cancelled meetings. His secretary said she'd received anonymous calls with accusations. "Boss, I think you should clear this up soon," she said. Richard was desperate. His entire life was being destroyed by lies. That afternoon, when he went to pick up Michael from the private school where he'd enrolled the boy, the principal called him in for a talk. "Mr. Richard, I need to clarify a few things." "What things?" "We've received calls questioning your relationship with Michael." Richard turned pale. "What kind of questions?" "Asking if the enrollment is legal, if you have the parents' permission, if there's anything irregular." "And what did you say?" "That you provided all the necessary documentation." But people insisted there were irregularities. Richard realized Victor had reached the school. "Principal, I can assure you there's nothing irregular. Michael is here with his parents' full consent." "I believe you, but I need you to bring the parents here to speak in person." "Of course. I'll bring them tomorrow." When Richard told David and Jennifer about the situation at the school, they were furious. "This is harassment," David said. "That's exactly what it is," Richard agreed. "Victor is using every means to hurt us." "But why?" Jennifer asked. "Because he wants to buy your land and I'm getting in his way." "So it's our fault," Jennifer began to cry. "It's no one's fault. The fault lies with Victor for acting in bad faith." "Richard," David said, "if this is hurting you, maybe we should end this arrangement." "No," Richard was firm. "I won't let a criminal destroy our family." Michael, who was listening to the conversation, got scared. "Uncle Richard, what's going to happen to me?" "Nothing's going to happen to you. We'll fix this." "How?" "By making everything legal. Doing the official adoption." David and Jennifer exchanged glances. "Richard," said Jennifer, "if that's what will solve the problem, we agree." "Are you sure?" "We are. Michael is practically your son already. A piece of paper won't change anything." Richard got emotional. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means to me." The following week, Richard filed the adoption paperwork. The lawyer explained it would be a quick process since the biological parents consented. "In 2 months, Michael will officially be your son," said Attorney James. "And the rumors? With the legal adoption, no one will be able to question your relationship with the boy." Richard felt excited. He'd finally have the son he always wanted, officially and legally. But the problems were far from over. When Victor found out about the adoption, he panicked. If Richard managed to adopt Michael, the Williams family would feel even more protected and never sell the land. He decided to take more extreme measures. One Thursday night, David was returning from Denver when 3 men approached him on a deserted road. "David Williams?" one of them asked. "That's me. What do you want?" A little chat. David realized he was in danger but had no way to escape. "A chat about what?" "About your friendship with Richard Johnson." "What about our friendship?" "It's bothering some important people." "What people?" "People who have an interest in your land." David understood they were Victor's henchmen. "My land isn't for sale. It should be, one way or another." "Are you threatening me?" "We're warning you. If you don't stop this nonsense of giving your son to Richard, bad things could happen to your family." David felt his blood boil. "If you lay a finger on my family, or what, you'll call the police? You'll call Richard?" The men laughed. "David, you're a simple man. Don't mess with the big players. Richard isn't a criminal like you. Richard is using you. Once he gets what he wants, he'll abandon you." "That's a lie. It's the truth. And when that happens, you'll be alone, without his protection and without our mercy." The men got back in their car and left, leaving David alone and shaken on the road. When he got home, David was visibly upset. "What happened?" asked Jennifer, noticing her husband's state. David told her about the encounter with the henchman. "My God!" Jennifer was terrified. "Did they threaten our daughters?" "Not directly, but the high threat was implied." "David, I think we should tell Richard." "I'm not sure that's a good idea. It might make things worse. Or it might help." "Richard has more resources than we do to protect himself," David reluctantly agreed. The next morning, when Richard came to pick up Michael, David called him aside for a private talk. "Richard, I need to tell you something serious." "What is it?" David recounted the previous night's episode. Richard was furious. "Did they threaten you directly?" "Indirectly, but the message was clear. David, you need to file a report at the police station." "And say what?" "That 3 men talked to me on the road, say you were threatened. Without proof, it won't go anywhere, and it might make things worse. Richard knew David was right. Then what do you suggest? I don't know. Maybe we should reconsider this whole situation. What do you mean? Maybe it's better to go back to how things were before someone gets hurt. Richard felt his world crumbling. David, are you thinking of giving up on the adoption? I'm thinking about my family's safety. But if you back out now, Victor wins. He'll keep pressuring you until he gets your land. At least our lives won't be in danger. David, trust me, I'll handle this. How? I don't know yet, but I will. Richard left there, determined to confront Victor directly. That afternoon, instead of taking Michael home, he went straight to Victor's ranch. Victor, Richard shouted as he entered the property's courtyard. Victor appeared on the porch of the main house. Richard Johnson, to what do I owe the honor? You know exactly why I'm here. I really don't. Enlighten me. Stop harassing the Williams family. What harassment? Stop spreading lies about me. What lies? Victor, I'll be clear. If you keep threatening that family, you'll have a problem with me. Victor laughed. Richard, you're in no position to make threats. Oh, really? Your business is failing because of the rumors. Your clients are abandoning you. Your reputation is ruined. Temporarily. Permanently. And it'll get worse if you keep insisting on this nonsense of adopting that boy. Richard climbed the porch steps. Victor, you don't know my limits. And you don't know mine. The two men stared at each other for a few seconds. Richard, I'll give you one last chance, Victor said. Drop this adoption. Convince the Williams family to sell me the land and I'll stop the rumors. And if I refuse, then you'll find out I can be much worse than I've already been. Richard left the ranch even more worried. He realized Victor wouldn't back down easily. That night he couldn't sleep, turning over alternatives in his mind. By morning he made a drastic decision. He called his lawyer. Attorney James, I want to speed up the adoption process. That's not possible, Richard. Adoption procedures have minimum timelines. But is there any way to give Michael legal protection in the meantime? You can file for temporary custody. That would grant you legal rights over the boy. How long does it take? With the parents' consent, just a few days. Do it immediately. Richard believed that with legal custody, Victor would lose ground for his attacks. But he was wrong. When Victor learned about the temporary custody, he grew even more desperate. He decided to play his final card. One Friday morning, while Michael was at school and Richard was working from home, two cars pulled up in front of the mansion. Four well-dressed men stepped out, municipal inspectors accompanied by social workers. Mr. Richard Johnson, one asked. That's me. We're from Child Protective Services and the Health Department. We've received a complaint about irregularities regarding a child in this residence. Richard paled. What kind of irregularities? Abuse, inadequate living conditions, child exploitation. That's absurd. Who filed this complaint? It's anonymous, but we're obligated to investigate. Of course, come in. Richard knew he had no choice. He allowed the inspectors to examine the entire house. They photographed Michael's room, measured the spaces, and took notes about food, education, and medical care. Where is the child now? The social worker asked. At school. Which school? Richard provided the address. We need to speak with him. Can I be present? No. The child must speak freely without you there to report any issues. Richard panicked. He knew Michael would be frightened being questioned by strangers. At least let me warn him you're coming. That won't be necessary. The inspectors left the house and headed to the school. Richard was left alone, pacing back and forth, imagining what was happening. At the school, Michael was called to speak with the social worker. Michael, my name is Dr. Sarah. I'm a social worker. Do you know what that means? No. It means my job is to make sure children are safe and well. I'm going to ask you a few questions, okay? Okay. How do you feel living with Mr. Richard? I feel good. Does he treat you well? He does. Does he give you enough food? Yes, even too much. Does he hit you or yell at you? Never. What about his wife? Michael hesitated. Mrs. Catherine doesn't like me very much. Why do you think that? She talks to me with a mean face, and sometimes she says things that make me sad." The social worker wrote everything down. "What kind of things?" "That I'm different, that I don't belong there. Do you want to keep living there?" Michael looked confused. "Why are you asking me that? I just want to know if you're happy." "I am happy, but I miss my family." "Do you still see your family?" "Every day. I sleep at their house." "So you don't live with Mr. Richard?" "I live in both places." The social worker was confused by the situation. "Michael, is anyone forcing you to stay at Mr. Richard's house?" "No. I wanted to stay." "And if you wanted to leave?" "Uncle Richard said I can leave whenever I want." After talking with Michael, the social worker went to the Williams family's home. Jennifer was terrified when she saw the officials. "What do you want?" "To talk about Michael." "What about Michael?" "We received a complaint about his situation." "What situation?" The social worker explained the allegations of mistreatment. "That's a lie." Jennifer was outraged. "Richard treats my son like a prince. Do you agree with this arrangement?" "Of course I do. Michael is getting opportunities he'd never have with us." "And your husband?" "My husband agrees too, but it's an informal arrangement. There's no legal paperwork. We're working on the formal adoption." The social worker also spoke with David, who had just come in from the ranch. "Mr. David, do you feel pressured to give up your son?" "Pressure? What pressure? A financial pressure, for example." David understood the implication. "Doctor, if you think I'm selling my son, you're very mistaken. I'm not accusing you, I just want to understand the situation." "The situation is simple. Richard is a good person who wants to help our son, and we want to accept that help." "What about the benefits you've received? The house renovations, for example?" "They were gifts from someone who's become family." After speaking with everyone involved, the social worker returned to Richard with a preliminary report. "Mr. Richard, we didn't find evidence of mistreatment or serious irregularities." Richard sighed in relief. "But there are some issues that need to be resolved." "What issues?" "The legal situation needs to be formalized quickly. The current arrangement, while working in practice, lacks proper legal support. We're already working on the adoption, and the issue with his wife needs to be addressed." "What do you mean?" "Michael said she doesn't treat him well. That could be a problem for the adoption process." Richard grew worried. "Can I talk to my wife about this?" "You can, but if there are more reports of mistreatment, we'll have to intervene." After the officials left, Richard had a serious talk with Catherine. "Catherine, your attitude toward Michael could ruin the adoption." "My attitude is fine." "It's not fine. Michael told the social worker you treat him badly." "I don't treat him badly, I just don't fake affection." "Catherine, either you change your behavior or I'll file for divorce." "You wouldn't do that." "I would. Michael is my priority now." Catherine was silent for a few minutes. "Richard, you've changed since that boy came into our lives." "I've changed for the better." "You've become obsessed. You only think about him." "I think about him because he's my son." "He's not your son, he has parents. He'll be my son officially soon." Catherine realized Richard was determined. "Fine, I'll try to be nicer to him." "Not nicer, just respectful." "All right?" But Richard suspected Catherine was lying. The following week, the attorney brought bad news. "Richard, the adoption process has been challenged." "By whom?" "Someone filed a petition claiming the adoption isn't in the child's best interest." "Who did this?" "The petition is anonymous, but it was filed through a very competent lawyer." Richard knew it could only be Victor. "And now? Now we have to prove the adoption is truly beneficial for Michael." "How?" "With psychological evaluations, social assessments, medical reports." "How long will this take?" "A few more months." Richard felt disheartened. Every obstacle seemed to lead to two new problems. That afternoon, when he went to pick up Michael from school, he noticed the boy was downcast. "What's wrong, Michael?" "The other kids are saying strange things about me." "What kind of things?" "That I'm not really your son, that you bought me from my parents." Richard felt anger toward Victor and everyone spreading those rumors. "Michael, you know that's not true." "I know, but they keep laughing at me." "And what do you say?" "That they're wrong." but then they ask why I have 2 dads and 2 mums. Richard realized the situation was affecting Michael psychologically. Michael, do you want to talk to someone about these feelings? With who? A psychologist. It's someone who helps us understand our emotions. Do you think I need to? I think it would be good for you. Richard scheduled an appointment with a child psychologist for the following week. But before the appointment, another problem arose. On Thursday morning, Richard got a frantic call from Jennifer. Richard, David was arrested. Arrested? How? The police showed up early this morning and took him. They said there was a warrant. A warrant for what? They didn't explain properly. Something about fraud. Richard panicked. Where is he? At the police station in Denver. I'm on my way. Richard cancelled all his appointments and rushed to the police station. Officer, I want to know why David Williams was arrested. Who are you? Richard Johnson. I'm family. David was arrested on suspicion of document fraud. What documents? His property papers. There's evidence they were forged. Richard was shocked. That's impossible. David is an honest man. The investigation will clarify that. Can I see him? Yes, but only 10 minutes. Richard found David in a small cell, visibly shaken. David, what happened? Richard, someone forged fake documents in my name. How? The officer said papers were submitted showing I sold part of my land 2 years ago. But I never sold anything. Richard understood immediately. It was Victor. How did he manage this? I don't know, but I'll find out. Richard, I'm scared. If they prove the documents are real, I could lose the land and even go to jail. That won't happen. I'll hire the best attorney to defend you. And my family, who will take care of them. I will. Don't worry. Richard left the police station even more determined to destroy Victor. He immediately sought out the attorney. Attorney James, I need your urgent help. Richard told him about David's arrest. This seems like a setup, the attorney said. It definitely is, but how do we prove it? We'll examine the submitted documents. If they were forged, there should be technical evidence. How long can David stay in jail? If we don't prove the forgery quickly, he could be there for months. Richard felt desperation taking over. And the adoption process? With the biological father arrested for fraud, it becomes very complicated. Richard realized Victor had struck a decisive blow. With David in jail, the family would be vulnerable and desperate. It would be easier to convince them to sell the land. That afternoon, Richard went to the Williams house. He found Jennifer crying, holding her 2 young daughters in her arms. Jennifer, everything will be all right. How can it be all right? My husband is in jail for something he didn't do. We'll prove his innocence, and if we can't, we will. Michael came home from school and was shocked to hear about his father's arrest. Uncle Richard, is my dad a criminal? Of course not. Your father is the victim of a setup. But why did they arrest him? Richard explained as simply as he could. Michael, there are bad people who want to hurt your family. They made up lies about your dad. Why would they do that? Because they want you to sell your land. Michael grew thoughtful. It's because of me, isn't it? What do you mean? If I hadn't come to live with you, none of this would have happened. Richard's heart ached. Michael, none of this is your fault. But if I go back to living just with my family, will they leave my dad alone? We don't know, but we won't give in to pressure. That night, Richard barely slept. He was losing the battle against Victor. On Friday morning, he got an unexpected call. Richard Johnson? Yes? This is Victor Reynolds' attorney. My client would like to speak with you. About what? A proposal that could solve all your current problems. Richard hesitated. Talking to Victor could be a trap or an opportunity. Where? At his ranch today at 3 in the afternoon. I'll be there. Richard decided to accept the meeting but brought his attorney along as a witness. At 3, Richard and attorney James arrived at Victor's ranch. The rancher greeted them in his living room with his own lawyer present. Richard, thank you for coming. Let's get straight to the point, Victor. What do you want? I want to settle our dispute like civilized men. What dispute? You're the one who caused all the trouble. Victor smiled. Richard, you're a smart man. You must see you're in a tough spot. What I see is that you're a criminal. Criminal? Me? Richard, you're the one tangled up in shady business with a child. There's nothing shady. Oh, there is. And now with the child's father arrested for fraud, your situation just got worse. Richard fought back his anger. What do you want, Victor? I'm making an offer that benefits everyone. I says I'm listening. Convince the Williams family to sell me their land at a fair price. In return, I'll drop the charges against David and stop the rumors about you. And if I refuse, then the charges against David get worse. More rumors about you spread. And who knows, maybe new irregularities come to light. Richard realized he was being blackmailed. Are you threatening me? I'm offering a solution. What about Michael? Michael goes back to his life. You go back to yours. Everyone's happy. Richard stayed silent for a long moment. I need time to think. You have until Monday to decide. Richard and his attorney left the ranch without giving an answer. Attorney James, what options do we have? Limited ones. Victor seems to have planned this carefully. But we can't give in to blackmail. If we don't, it could get worse for everyone. David might actually get convicted over forged documents. Can we prove they're forged? We're trying, but Victor's no amateur. If he faked documents, they'll be convincing. Richard spent the weekend tormented. He didn't know what to do. By Monday morning, he still hadn't decided. But one event changed everything. Michael arrived at school in tears. What's wrong? Richard asked. Mrs. Catherine said she doesn't want me at home anymore. Richard was furious. She said that? She said I only brought trouble to you, that it'd be better if I went back to my family. Richard went straight home and had the biggest fight of his life with Catherine. How can you say that to a child? Because it's true. Ever since he got here, we've had nothing but trouble. Catherine, Michael is an innocent child. Michael is a child who doesn't belong in our world. Then maybe you don't belong in mine. Richard, choose him or me. I choose him. Catherine turned pale. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Richard, we've been married for 15 years. 15 years where you never truly supported me. And now you're trading me for some random boy. He's not just some random boy, he's my son. Catherine grabbed her jewelry and some clothes and left the house. Call me when you get tired of this madness. Richard was left alone with Michael, who had witnessed part of the argument. Uncle Richard, did Mrs. Catherine leave because of me? No, Michael. She left because she doesn't understand what a real family is. But now you're alone. I'm not alone, I have you. Michael hugged Richard tightly. I love you, Uncle Richard. I love you too, son. It was the first time Richard had called Michael, his son, directly. That afternoon, Richard made his decision about Victor's proposal. He called the rancher's attorney. Tell Victor I refuse his offer. Are you sure? Absolutely. He won't like this. That's his problem. Richard knew he was declaring war, but he didn't care. He was ready to fight to the end for his new family. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. On Tuesday, Victor's reaction was immediate. New documents appeared at the police station, proving that David had committed other frauds. Even worse rumors about Richard began circulating. That he had mental issues, that he was broke, that he had a history of violence. 3 major clients cancelled contracts with his company. The bank where Richard kept his primary account called, questioning the origin of some transactions. Mr. Richard, we need to clarify some deposits and transfers in your account. They're normal business transactions. We've received information suggesting they may be funds of questionable origin. Richard realized Victor was attacking from every possible angle. That night he spoke with Attorney James. The situation is becoming unbearable. Richard, maybe it's time to reconsider Victor's offer. Never. Then prepare for a long and exhausting battle. I'm ready. But Richard had no idea how much worse things could get. On Wednesday, Michael was expelled from school. Mr. Richard, the principal said, we've received multiple complaints from parents about Michael being here. What kind of complaints? They claim his irregular situation could negatively influence the other children. That's absurd. Maybe it is, but I can't ignore the pressure from other parents. So you're expelling an innocent child because of social pressure? We're suggesting he transfer until his situation normalizes. Richard left the school furious. Michael tried to comfort him. Uncle Richard, I can just study at home. You have the right to a proper education. And you can teach me. You're a better teacher than anyone. Richard was moved by the boy's maturity. All right, we'll do homeschooling. But the problems kept coming. On Thursday, Richard's accountant brought bad news. Richard, the company is facing serious cash flow issues because of the cancelled contracts. That and other problems. The bank froze some funds under investigation. Suppliers are hesitant to sell to us. How long can we hold out? At most, 2 months. Richard realized Victor was succeeding in destroying his financial life. On Friday, the attorney brought more bad news. Richard, there's a new complication in the adoption process. What? Someone claimed you lack the emotional and financial stability to adopt a child. Based on what? Your separation from your wife, the financial troubles at your company, the rumors about your behavior. Richard felt desperate. So what now? Now the process is suspended until your situation stabilizes. For how long? We don't know. Richard felt like he was losing everything. His wife, his business, his reputation, and now the chance to officially adopt Michael. That night, he spoke honestly with the boy. Michael, I need to tell you the truth about our situation. What truth? We're facing some very serious problems. Maybe it's better if you go back to living with your family until things calm down. Michael looked frightened. You don't want me anymore. I do, more than anything in the world. But maybe it's better for you to stay away from all this trouble. Uncle Richard, my dad always taught me that when a storm comes, family sticks together. We don't abandon each other. But you're just a child. You shouldn't have to. Go through this. If you're my family, then I want to go through it all with you. Richard hugged Michael with tears in his eyes. Are you sure? I am. We're family, right? We sure are. Richard made a risky decision. If Victor wanted war, he'd get war. On Saturday morning, he went to see a private investigator. Frank, I need you to look into Victor Reynolds. What kind of investigation? I want to know everything about him. His business deals, contracts, relationships, especially things he wouldn't want discovered. That'll cost you, and it'll take time. I have time and money, at least for now. So in a week, I'll have a preliminary report. Richard knew he was spending money he might need for other things, but he saw no alternative. That afternoon, he visited David in prison. How are you holding up? Better than I expected. The other inmates have been respectful. What about the investigation? The detective said the documents look authentic. It'll be hard to prove they're fake. Don't give up, David. We're looking into Victor. Richard, you don't have to spend your money on me. Are your family now? Of course I do. How are Jennifer and the girls? They're fine, I'm taking care of them. And Michael. Michael's being brave. He wants to stay with me despite all the trouble. David smiled. That boy has a big heart. He really does. The following week, Richard intensified his investigation into Victor. The detective uncovered some interesting details. Richard, Victor has several irregularities in his business dealings. What kind? Land purchase contracts with predatory clauses, questionable documents, intimidation of small landowners. But nothing that could legally incriminate him. Not yet, but I found something interesting. What? Victor has a history of using the same tactics against others who opposed him. How so? 3 years ago, a rancher named Robert Anderson refused to sell his land to Victor. Soon after, fraudulent documents appeared in his name too. What happened? Robert was arrested, lost his land, and now lives in Denver doing odd jobs. Richard felt a spark of hope. Where can I find this Robert? He works at a mechanic's shop on the outskirts of town. Richard went straight to look for Robert Anderson. He found a thin, bitter-looking man in his 50s, fixing cars in a small, grimy garage. Robert Anderson? That's me. Who's asking? Richard Johnson. I need to talk to you about Victor Reynolds. Robert's face hardened. I don't want to talk about that man. Please, it's important. Important to who? To another family going through the same thing you did. Robert stopped working and looked Richard in the eyes. What did Victor do this time? Richard told the whole story. Robert listened in silence. The same thing he did to me, said Robert when Richard finished. Fake documents, fraud accusations, pressure until the family gave in. Do you have proof the documents were fake? I did. But the attorney Victor hired to accuse me knew what he was doing. The forgeries were perfect. And you lost everything? I lost the land, the house, my dignity. My wife left me. My kids barely speak to me. Richard felt sorry for Robert, but also saw an opportunity. Robert, what if we tried to prove both your innocence at the same time? How? By gathering evidence from both cases, showing that Victor has a pattern of criminal behavior. You think that could work? I think it's worth trying. Robert grew thoughtful. Richard, you seem like a good man, but Victor is powerful. He has important friends, skilled attorneys, money to bribe whoever he needs. And we have the truth. Sometimes the truth isn't enough, but sometimes it is. Robert agreed to help Richard. Together, they began collecting evidence of Victor's crimes. They spoke with other small landowners who had been pressured. They investigated the attorneys working for Victor. They analyzed contracts and public records. After 2 weeks of digging, they had a substantial dossier. Richard, said Robert, I think we have enough to at least raise suspicions about Victor. Then let's go to the district attorney's office. They headed to the district attorney's office with all the evidence they had gathered. The prosecutor who met with them took an interest in the case. Attorney William, said Richard, we believe Victor Reynolds is leading a land-grabbing scheme using forged documents. That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof? We have strong leads and several victims willing to testify. The prosecutor reviewed the material for 2 hours. There are indeed suspicious elements here. I'll open an investigation. How long will it take? A few months. But I can request a suspension of the cases against the victims until the investigation is complete. Richard felt hopeful. Finally, there was light at the end of the tunnel. But Victor wasn't going to sit still. When he learned about the district attorney's investigation, he panicked. He decided to speed up his plans against Richard. The following Thursday, Richard received a notice from the Internal Revenue Service. Mr. Richard Johnson, there are signs of tax evasion in your business. What do you mean? I've always paid all my taxes. We've received information about undeclared income. What information? That will be determined in the investigation. Richard realized it was another one of Victor's schemes. That same day, he received a notice from the health department alleging irregularities in his business. The next day, a notice from the Department of Labor over supposed labor violations. Attorney James, Richard told his lawyer, Victor is using every government agency to attack me. It seems he has connections everywhere. How can we defend ourselves? By proving all the accusations are baseless. But that will take time and a lot of money. How much money? More than you have available right now. Richard realized he was in a financial trap. Victor knew he wouldn't have the resources to defend himself on so many fronts at once. That night, Richard had a tough decision to make. He talked to Michael about the situation. Michael, I think it's time for you to go back to your family temporarily. Why? Because I can't support you properly anymore. The business is failing. I'm being investigated by multiple agencies, but I don't need much. I can eat less, wear simpler clothes. Michael, you're a child. You shouldn't have to give up anything. Uncle Richard, you promised me you'd never abandon me. I'm not abandoning you, I'm protecting you. Protecting me from what? Richard didn't know how to explain the full complexity of the situation to a 9-year-old. From the hardships that are coming. What if I want to face those hardships with you? Michael, you don't understand. Yes, I do. You're scared and you want to send me away. Michael began to cry. It's not fear, it's responsibility. Yes, it is. You're afraid I'll be a burden. You've never been a burden. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Then why do you want to send me away? Richard couldn't answer. He hugged Michael and cried with him. That night, Richard made a final decision. No matter the consequences, he wouldn't abandon Michael. On Friday morning, he called all the company's creditors. "I'm selling everything to pay off the debts." "Richard, if you do that, you'll have nothing left," said the accountant. "I'll have what matters." "What?" "My family." Richard put the company up for sale. He listed the mansion. He sold the imported cars. He sold the jewelry and valuables. In 2 weeks, he had paid off all the debts and still had a little money left to start over. "Uncle Richard," Michael said, "did you sell everything because of me?" "I sold everything to protect our family. But now we're as poor as I was before." "Michael, wealth isn't measured by money. It's measured by love. And you won't miss those things. The only thing I'd miss is you." Michael hugged Richard tightly. "I love you, Dad." It was the first time Michael had called Richard Dad. Richard cried with emotion. "I love you too, son." With the remaining money, Richard bought a modest house near the Williams family ranch. It was small but comfortable. 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and a bathroom. "It's very different from the mansion," Michael remarked. "But it's ours. Ours. Yours and mine." Michael was happy. Now that they lived near the family, he could visit them every day. Jennifer and the girls came over for dinner twice a week. Richard found work as a freelance consultant, earning much less than before, but enough to live decently. Meanwhile, the district attorney's office investigation into Victor Reynolds was progressing. Robert Anderson and Richard constantly provided new evidence. "Attorney William," Robert said to the prosecutor, "we've found 3 more of Victor's victims." "Good. The more victims, the stronger the case." "And what about David's situation?" "I'll request his release next week. With this new evidence, it's clear he was framed." Richard felt hopeful. Finally, there was light at the end of the tunnel. The following week, David was released. The family reunion was emotional. "Dad!" Michael ran to hug David. "My dear boy, you've grown so much." Jennifer cried with joy at having her husband back. Emma and Olivia barely let their father out of their sight. "Richard," David said, "how can I ever thank you?" "You don't have to, we're family." Family indeed. That night, the 2 families had dinner together at Richard's simple home. "Dad," Michael said, "now that we're all together, can I keep living with Uncle Richard and visit you every day?" "Of course, son," David said. "Richard is your father now, too. And can I keep learning the things he teaches me?" "Absolutely," Michael beamed. "So now I have 2 dads, 2 moms, and 2 homes." "And 2 sisters, too," Emma added. Everyone laughed. It was the first time in months Richard had felt truly happy. 2 months later, the district attorney's office charged Victor Reynolds with racketeering, forgery, land fraud, and other crimes. "Richard," the prosecutor said, "Victor has been arrested. He won't bother you anymore. And his victims? They will all have their lands returned. The criminal charges against them were dropped." Richard felt relieved. Finally, after so much suffering, justice had been served. The following week, Richard received an unexpected call. "Richard Johnson." "Yes, this is Catherine." Richard was surprised. He hadn't spoken to his ex-wife in months. "What do you want, Catherine?" "I heard you're living in a modest house and working as a consultant." "So what? I wanted to know if you're doing okay." "I'm better than ever." "Richard, I'm sorry for what happened." "What are you sorry for?" "For not supporting you. For not giving Michael a chance." Richard fell silent. "Can you forgive me?" "Catherine, I forgave you a long time ago. Is there any chance we could get back together?" "No." "Because of Michael?" "Because of me. I discovered I can be happy without you." Richard. "Catherine, I wish you all the happiness in the world, but my life is different now." Richard hung up the phone and felt relieved. He had finally closed a chapter of his life. That evening, Michael asked who had called. It was Mrs. Catherine. She wanted to come back. "And are you going to take her back?" "Of course not." "Why?" "Because our family is already complete." Michael smiled. "That's true, our family is perfect, just the way it is." A year later, Michael's adoption process was finalized. Richard was officially the boy's father. "Now I'm really your son on paper too," said Michael, looking at the new birth certificate. You've always been my real son. The paper just confirms it. Daddy Richard? Yes, son? Can I ask you something? Of course. If you could go back in time, would you do everything differently? Richard thought for a few seconds. I wouldn't change a thing. Every hardship we faced made us stronger as a family. Not even the problems with Victor. Not even the problems with Victor. They taught us that real family supports each other through tough times. And Mrs. Catherine? Being apart from Catherine showed me that true love means accepting people as they are. Michael grew thoughtful. Daddy Richard, now I understand why you chose me. Why? Because you needed someone who truly loved you, and I needed someone who would give me chances to grow. And now? Now we both have what we needed. Richard hugged Michael with tears in his eyes. You're right, son. We're complete. 2 years passed. Richard had rebuilt his professional life. His consulting business was growing steadily. Michael attended an excellent public school in the area and excelled in all his subjects. David and Jennifer had expanded their ranch and now ran a small family agribusiness. Emma, now 8, said she wanted to be a lawyer like Attorney James. Olivia, 5, followed Michael everywhere like a loyal puppy. The two families had lunch together every Sunday, sometimes at Richard's house, sometimes at the renovated Williams' home. Michael, Richard said one Sunday, do you remember when we first met? I do. You asked me if I wanted to be your son. And what did you think at that moment? I thought you were crazy. Michael laughed. How could someone want a son without really knowing him? And now? Now I know that sometimes the heart knows people before the mind does. What do you mean? You knew you'd love me before you even knew me, and I knew I could trust you before I understood why. Richard was moved. Michael, you've become a very wise boy. I learned from the best teacher. Who? You, and my dad David, and my mum Jennifer. Even from the hardships we faced. What did the hardships teach you? That real family never gives up on each other. That money doesn't bring happiness. That courage is doing the right thing even when it's hard. Richard looked at Michael with pride. That 9-year-old boy he had found working in the field was now a 12-year-old teenager, smart, brave, and full of dreams. Daddy Richard. Yes, can I tell you a secret? Of course. At first I was afraid you'd leave when you found out my flaws. What flaws? That I was stubborn, that sometimes I got angry, that I didn't know how to use a fork and knife properly. Richard laughed. And now? Now I know you love me with all my flaws and qualities, like a real family does. And you? Do you love me with my flaws? What flaws? Michael pretended to be surprised. I'm stubborn sometimes. I get nervous, I work too much. Daddy Richard, those aren't flaws, that's how you take care of our family. Richard hugged Michael. How lucky I was to find you. It wasn't luck, Dad, it was destiny. Destiny? Yeah, I think God knew we both needed each other. That afternoon, Richard reflected on everything that had happened over the past 3 years. He had lost a wife who had never truly understood him. He had lost a company and a mansion that brought him no real happiness. He had lost friends who only cared about his money. But he had gained a son who loved him unconditionally. He had gained an extended family that welcomed him as if he had always belonged. He had gained the satisfaction of knowing he was making a difference in good people's lives. He had gained the peace of mind that comes from living by his own values. In the end, the question he had asked Michael in the cornfield 3 years earlier, "Do you want to be my son?" had changed both their lives for the better. Richard had discovered that being a father wasn't about biology, but about love, dedication, and commitment. Michael had learned that having opportunities didn't mean abandoning his roots, but honoring them by growing as a person. And together they had discovered that a true family is the one you choose with your heart and build with hard work, patience, and love. On the eve of their 4th anniversary together, Michael surprised Richard. He had written an essay at school titled My Family. Daddy Richard, I want to read my essay to you. Of course, son. Michael took out a sheet of paper and began reading. My family is different from most. I have 2 fathers, 2 mothers, 2 homes, and 2 stories. My father David taught me that work gives a man dignity and that honesty is worth more than money. My mother Jennifer taught me that a mother's love is endless and that family helps each other in tough times. My father Richard taught me that dreams can come true if you work for them, and that education is the greatest gift we can give ourselves. Some people think it's strange that I have two families, but I think I'm very lucky. When my father Richard asked if I wanted to be his son, I didn't know I was saying yes to the greatest adventure of my life. I went through hard times, met bad people like Victor, but also good people like Attorney James and Mr. Robert. I learned that family isn't just about blood. Family is who chooses to stand by you even when it's hard. My father Richard lost a lot because of me. His wife, his company, his big house. But he always says he gained far more than he lost. I gained a lot too. I got an education, opportunities, experiences I'd never have had. But the most important thing I gained was knowing I'm loved. My family might be different, but it's perfect for me. And if anyone asked if I'd change anything about my story, I'd say no. Because it was through all the hardships and joys that I discovered what true love is. When Michael finished reading, Richard was crying. "Michael, that's the most beautiful essay I've ever heard." "It's true, Dad, every word." "You know I feel the same way?" "I do, that's why we're a real family." That night, Richard lay awake thinking about Michael's essay. The boy had understood at just 12 years old. Lessons many. Adults spend a lifetime learning. He had understood that true love requires sacrifice. He had understood that family is built through daily choices. He had understood that hardships can strengthen relationships. He had understood that gratitude is essential for happiness. Richard felt proud of the young man Michael was becoming. But more than pride, he felt gratitude. Gratitude for finding that boy working in the fields that morning 3 years ago. Gratitude for mustering the courage to ask the question that changed their lives. "Do you want to be my son?" Gratitude that Michael had said yes, despite his fear and uncertainty. Gratitude that the Williams family had trusted him. Gratitude for the struggles that had strengthened them as a family. Gratitude for the justice that prevailed in the end. And gratitude for the simple but happy life they had built together. The next morning, Richard woke early and went to watch Michael sleeping. The boy had grown so much in recent years, but he still wore the peaceful expression of childhood. Richard remembered the first night Michael had slept in his home, scared and unsure. Now he slept with the calm of someone who felt protected and loved. "Good morning, Dad," Michael said, opening his eyes. "Good morning, son. Did you sleep well?" "Very well. I dreamed we were a big, happy family." "Aren't we?" "We are. But in the dream, we were even bigger." "How so?" "In the dream, you and Mrs. Catherine had worked things out, and I had lots of adopted brothers and sisters like me." Richard smiled. "That would be beautiful." "Daddy." "Richard, have you ever thought about adopting other kids?" "Why? Aren't you happy being an only child?" "I'm happy. But sometimes I think there must be other kids like me who need a family." Richard was moved by Michael's generosity. "Would you like to have adopted siblings?" "I would, if they were like me, hard-working and respectful." "Michael, you have such a big heart. I learned it from you." Richard grew thoughtful. The idea of adopting more children had never crossed his mind, but it made sense. He had enough love to give. He had the financial means, he had adoption experience, and he had Michael as proof that adoption could work. "Michael, how about we talk to Daddy David and Mommy Jennifer about this idea?" "Really? Really?" Michael jumped out of bed, excited. "Can we do it today?" "We can do it today." That afternoon, the two families gathered to discuss the possibility of Richard adopting more children. "Richard," Jennifer said, "are you sure you want more kids?" "And I'm not sure of anything. But Michael made me think it might be a good idea." "And you, Michael?" David asked. "Are you sure you want to share Daddy Richard's attention?" "Daddy David, Daddy Richard has enough love for many kids, and I can help take care of the younger ones." "That's a big responsibility for you," Jennifer observed. "I know, but I've learned that responsibility helps us grow." Richard felt even prouder of Michael. "So you agree?" "We do," David said, "but on one condition." "What?" "That the children are raised knowing their roots, just like Michael was." "Of course, that's essential." and that our family stays united. Forever. Richard promised. 3 months later, Richard was enrolled in adoption programs with several agencies. The process was long and bureaucratic, but Richard had experience and patience. Michael participated actively, giving his thoughts on the kind of siblings he'd like. Daddy Richard, it could be boys and girls of different ages. Why? Because then the house would be livelier, and I could teach each of them different things. What would you teach? For the boys, I'd teach them to work in the garden and play soccer. For the girls, I'd teach them to cook and care for plants. And for everyone, I'd teach them that family is the most important thing in the world. Richard smiled. Michael would make an excellent big brother. 6 months later, Richard got a call from the social worker. Mr. Richard, we have 2 children who might fit your family's profile. How so? They're siblings, a 7-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl. Their parents died in an accident, and there are no close relatives willing to take them in. What are they like? The boy's name is Daniel, and he's very responsible for his age. The girl's name is Sophie. She's affectionate and clever. Can I meet them? Yes, but first we need to talk to Michael as well. Of course. The next day, Richard and Michael went to the shelter to meet Daniel and Sophie. Daniel was a serious boy with brown hair and sad eyes. Sophie was a small girl with curly hair and a shy smile. Daniel, Sophie, the social worker said, this is Richard and Michael. They'd like to meet you. Daniel eyed Richard warily. Do you want to be our dad? I'd like to talk to you about that possibility. What if we don't want to? Then you'll stay here until another family comes along. Sophie hid behind her brother. Michael crouched down to their level. Hi, Daniel. Hi, Sophie. I'm Michael, and this is my dad, Richard. Are you adopted too? Daniel asked. Yes, and it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Why? Because I got a dad who truly loves me and a big happy family. Sophie peeked out from behind Daniel. Do you have siblings? I have 2 sisters who live with my other parents. Other parents? Michael explained his family situation simply. So you have 4 parents? Sophie looked impressed. Yep, and you could too if you wanted. Daniel remained skeptical. What if they get tired of us? Real. Families don't get tired, Michael said. They might argue sometimes or worry, but they never give up. How do you know? Because I've been through tough times with my dad, Richard, and he never gave up on me. Richard was moved listening to Michael talk with the children. After 2 hours of conversation, Daniel and Sophie seemed more at ease. Can I ask something? Sophie said to Richard. Of course. If we live with you, will we have to work a lot? Richard laughed. You'll have to help around the house, study hard and be polite, but you'll also have time to play and have fun. And can we visit our parents at the cemetery? Richard's eyes softened. Of course, whenever you want. Daniel finally smiled. I think you're nice. And you're nice too, Michael said. 2 weeks later, Daniel and Sophie moved in with Richard and Michael. The adjustment was easier than Richard expected. Michael was an exemplary big brother, helping the younger kids adapt to their new routine. Daniel, despite his grief, proved to be a brave and smart boy. Sophie won Richard over on the very first day, calling him Daddy Rich and asking for bedtime stories. Daddy Rich, Sophie said in the second week. Can I ask you something? Of course, Princess. Why did you want kids like us? Like you how? Kids who didn't come from your belly. Richard smiled at the innocence of the question. Sophie, a child is someone you love and care for. It doesn't matter where they come from. So you really love us? Very much. How much? More than all the stars in the sky. Sophie was satisfied with the answer. Daniel was more reserved with his feelings, but Richard could tell he was adjusting well. Daniel, Richard said one evening, how are you feeling here? Okay, Daniel hesitated. But sometimes I get sad. Why? Because I like it here, but I feel like I'm betraying my real parents. Richard understood the boy's conflict. Daniel, you can love your real parents and still be happy here. Really? Absolutely, love isn't limited. The more we love, the more love we have to give. So I can love you and my parents at the same time? Of course you can. Daniel seemed relieved. Daddy Richard? Yes. Thank you for choosing us. Richard hugged Daniel with tears in his eyes. Thank you for giving me a chance. 6 months later, Richard's house was transformed. What was once a home for two now sheltered a family of 4. Michael had become a protective and caring brother. Daniel had shed his sadness and become a cheerful, playful child. Sophie had won everyone over with her spontaneity and affection. And Richard had discovered that being a father to 3 children was even better than being a father to 1. Daddy Richard, Michael said one Sunday, our family is perfect now. You think so? I do. We have boys and girls, different ages, different stories, but so much love. And the 3 of you get along? We sometimes fight over silly things, Daniel said, but we always make up. Because we're real siblings, Sophie added. Richard looked at his 3 children and felt like the most fulfilled man in the world. 4 years ago, he was a wealthy but empty businessman, married to a woman who didn't truly love him, with no hope of having children. Now he was a middle-class man with a job he loved, 3 wonderful kids and an extended family that had welcomed him as one of their own. He had traded material wealth for emotional richness. He had swapped social status for personal fulfillment. He had exchanged an empty life for one full of meaning, and he regretted nothing. Daddy Richard, Sophie said, can I tell you a secret? Of course, princess. Sometimes I dream about my real parents. And how do you feel when you wake up? A little sad, but then I remember I have you and the boys and I'm happy again. Sophie, you can miss your parents and still be happy here. I know. Michael explained that to me. Richard looked at Michael with pride. The boy had grown into a wise and compassionate young man. And you, Daniel, how do you feel? I feel lucky, Daniel replied, because even though I lost my parents, I gained a new family who loves me. And you, Michael? I feel grateful, because it was because of me that we met Daniel and Sophie, so now I have real siblings. Richard was moved. And I feel blessed to have the 3 of you. That night, after putting the children to bed, Richard stayed on the porch, gazing at the stars. He thought about his entire journey up to that point. He remembered the hard-working boy he'd found in the cornfield. He recalled the question that had changed his life. Do you want to be my son? He thought of all the challenges they'd faced together. He reflected on the family they'd built, brick by brick, with love and dedication. And he felt deeply grateful. Grateful for having the courage to follow his heart. Grateful for finding people who valued love over money. Grateful for learning that family is built by choice, not just by blood. Grateful for discovering that giving love is the surest way to receive it. Grateful for understanding that true happiness comes from meaningful relationships, not material possessions. Grateful for 3 amazing children who taught him something new every day. And grateful to know his story was still being written, with many happy chapters ahead. As he was about to go inside, he heard a voice behind him. Dad Richard? It was Michael, who had come down for a glass of water. Are you okay? I'm great, son, just looking at the stars. Can I look with you? Of course. The 2 remained silent for a few minutes, gazing at the starry sky. Daddy Richard? Yes? Thank you. Thank you for what? For asking me if I wanted to be your son that day at the ranch. Thank you for saying yes. Daddy Richard? Yes? If another child ever needed a family, would you adopt again? Richard smiled. I don't know, Michael. It depends on many things. Depends on what? On you agreeing, on us being able to raise another child well, on a child coming along who fits our family. And if all that happens, then we'll talk about it. Michael was satisfied with the answer. Daddy Richard? Yes, son? I love you. I love you. Too, my boy. The 2 embraced under the starry sky, grateful to have found each other and built a family rooted in true love. And so ends the story of the businessman who asked a poor boy if he wanted to be his son. A story about how love can transform lives. A story about how family is built through choices, not just blood. A story about how hardships can strengthen relationships when faced together. A story about how true happiness comes from meaningful relationships, not material possessions. A story about how a simple question, "Do you want to be my son?" can change the fate of many people. And above all, a story about how it's never too late to discover the true meaning of family. The key. Ed, now tell us what you thought of Richard and Michael's story. Do you think Richard made the right decision by insisting on adoption despite so many challenges? What moved you most in this journey of a family built with so much love? Share your honest thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more heartwarming stories.